Well, hello, and welcome to Stop, Let's Team Up. I'm Ross Aiken. Today I have a guest with me today. It is David Banks of the Micronauts Restoration Project. How you doing, David?
Doing great. Glad to be on.
Oh, thanks coming. I follow you on Twitter. You're a good Twitter follower because it's a lot of late 70s, early 80s Micronauts art, which I'm always cool with. Whether it be Mike Golden or Pat Brodrick, I'm always happy when I see those two guys pop up, and all the others. But those are two guys I became huge fans of because of this book. So I'm going to ask you, like I do in all my podcasts when I bring a guest on, if it's Doctor Who, as when did you become a Doctor Who fan? But this is a comic podcast, so when did you become a comic book fan? Do you have a comic book origin story?
Sure. I remember the first comic book that stuck in my mind was Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commanders 13, because it had Captain America guest starring.
Is that the first guest star issue? Is it?
I don't know if it was or not. It was issue 13 of that series, and it was drawn by Jack Kirby.
Okay.
And I read it several times at the barbershop, and then one time I was there, I snitched it.
Yeah. It happens.
I can't remember if I was in, second grade or third grade. I'd have to do the math backwards.
I owned a comic shop for a very short period of time, and I bought a run in this box of comics. It was a mishmash of Army comics, so I kind of just went through real quick, and I realized that the Sergeant Fury in the back was like a 1 through 60 or whatever. It was pretty a long run, and I sold them. But I gave it may have been that issue to my brother. But my brother is the guy who handed me comics to shut me up. Here, read this. Look at it. Just stop talking to me. And it came back to bite him because I started stealing his comics, and then I had a better paying job, and I bought most of the collection. And I owned and I worked in comic shop, so he would get my discount.
And the second comic I remember was a Fantastic Four issue where Reed Richards had come up with this exotic dishwasher for Sue.
Oh God, that's got to be old.
I thought that was like issue 43 or 44.
Okay, I'm glad it would be pre-Roy. That sounds more Stan than Roy or
right.
The other guys after.
The splash page of the Action comic book I thought was bizarre and mesmerizing at the same time because Joe Sinnott had started to ink the series again.
I love him on Jack.
Yes,
I do. It's the right balance. But I'm a big Mike Royer fan. It suits what Jack was doing at the end of his career. It really. Yes. I'll talk to friends of mine who are comic readers but not comic fans, and I talk about inkers, and they go, "Why is that important?" It's like, oh man, you have no idea. You have no idea how much.
I got to visit Phil Hester's house one time, and I was being able to show my appreciation of different inkers over different pencils, and to see his original art collection, and to see Frank Giacola over Kirby pencils was just amazing.
Yeah. Well, I just in my regular episodes of the Stop Makes Sense, I do a Legion feed, and then there's the regular show. I'm doing all of the Liberty Legion appearances because they're all in one trade, so every week. But it's heck in the Liberty Legion Marvel Premiere issues, and it's Frank Robbins in the Invaders, both inked by Vinnie Coletta. The Don Heck is hurt by the Vinnie ink because Don Heck's a better ink. Is it better? His work needs a good inker.
Yes, Wally Wood.
Oh God.
Don Heck and Wally Wood. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, God, who else? Giffen Wood.
Even Dave Cochran inked Heck, and it was great.
Oh, I bet that was beautiful. But Vinnie, no. And on Frank Robbins, Frank's so heavy with the black, Vinnie can't erase anything.
Yeah.
Or skip it because it's beautiful. And that's what I thought when I was talking about it is Frank Robbins got some heavy shading. He's not letting someone screw up. I don't know if it's intentional or just, but it's a lot of action. His stuff is. There's not a lot of backgrounds when he's got people up front. People are up front. So, but back to this. But tell us something about the Micronauts Restoration Project. Why you wanted to do it, and what does it entail?
Well, I retired at the end of 2020, so I'm old. And I wanted to give myself a project where I didn't have anybody breathing down my neck. And I had, for the last 20 years of my career, I had a second job of doing production work on comic book projects. And so I'm taking all that knowledge and effort that I put in that 20 years to bear on this project in my retirement. And I'm restoring, just to show it can be done by one person, I'm restoring all 2,000 pages. And it's a 3-year project, and I'm already 2 years into it. And I just started talking about it recently, last November on Twitter, and I'm posting examples as I go along. And I've got a whole stack of show and tell stuff here if we get to it. And but the bottom line is that as my comic book career, my piggyback comic book career progressed, I became more and more interested in restoring what I call pre-digital comics.
Yeah, I've seen some of your work and it looks really nice, and that's.
Thank you.
And I know there've been advances because when the Marvel and DC both went to those two each had black and white reprint runs, which I liked. I held on to my Avengers one and my Defenders one. I used to have a bunch of them, and they're great. And I didn't mind it was in black and white. I know what color the costumes were, but you would catch a page randomly that you're going, that's just a photograph of an existing page in a comic. You don't own a print negative of this.
Right.
I mean, I know they don't own all the art, but you don't have a plate.
Right.
Or you have a bad scan of it, and the best thing you couldn't get a good scan, so you took a photograph.
Well, it gets even worse at times because my understanding is that in some cases they would take a page and make a photostat of it and then re-ink it. So it wasn't even truly the original representation of the comic.
When they did a reprint or pre-publication?
When they were doing the reprint. This was back in the early days of the Marvel Masterworks and the Essentials collections.
Yeah, because you could, and it was odd where you'd see it. I saw one in the middle of, I think it was a Roy Thomas, John Buscema, Tom Palmer era of Avengers. And I think it wasn't in 57, but it was like 58 or 59, right after the Vision appeared. And I went, how do you not have you've been reprinting the hell out of this thing.
And my brother-in-law says that to me. Don't they have all the film? And I go, no, they probably have none of this. So it requires, kind of recreating the wheel. You do a high-resolution scan, you bring it into Photoshop, and you start using a variety of methods to clean it up and get it print ready again, yet try to stay true to the original thing. I don't like recolored comics because the new colors just don't seem to suit the old stories.
It has to be designed for, and people are drawing toward they're drawing for the technology. This is what they can do with what I'm giving them.
Yes.
Yeah. A couple times, I think I know what you're talking about. They did. I don't remember. I've seen stuff from that era. I call it the yellow era of comic book coloring. It's that mid '80s, and there's just why is there so much yellow? But they were playing with the colors, and I've seen those recolors, and it doesn't bug me. And there was one. Adams did a recolor of one of his. I think it was a Dead Man collection.
Mm-hmm.
He recolored it. And it was okay, but I'm like you. I would prefer you stay as close as you can.
And the paper plays a big part of that.
Huge.
I mean, you have to have, and I've created things for high glossy paper and really ratty-tatty paper. And, these older comics need a lesser quality paper. They need a matte paper, not coated. They need something so the art doesn't bleed through so you at least get to enjoy the page. But people weren't coloring for white paper; they were coloring for brown newsprint too.
Yeah, it was that off white.
Mm-hmm.
I think DC did a good job. I don't have it, but my podcasting partner Vic's nephew, he's my neighbor in this apartment building. He owns the Kirby when they did the New Gods, and they printed it on a more newsprint type paper.
Yes,
something a little more durable.
Yes.
But had that what I call real paper, paper, and And it looked 10 times better than it would have looked in the traditional. I'm a big hardback guy now.
Yeah,
And
and I am too, but I still want that kind of paper, even if it's got a hard cover. And if you could give me the smell also, that'd be wonderful. But
every once in a while, my wife's like, "What do you go?" It's like wet leaves. We've got a bunch of big trees out in front of our house. I live on Monument Avenue in Richmond. We've got this big. They get me big, mediums, very old trees. And every once in a while, there's a certain wet, damp wood smell. And she goes, "It smells like Huey, my brother, the comic pusher." The back of his car in like 1972, because he always had about 100 comic books and pulp novels, and his house always smelled like that.
Yeah.
It always. I used to have a room with comics. Yeah, I miss it. I had a room where it was nothing but comics, and that smell would, on a good day, especially if you're going through and you find that just that right. Oh wow, I haven't read this in a while. It's a great smell.
Yes.
So why did you pick Micronauts?
Well, it wasn't my idea.
Okay.
I was a partner with Tim Benson at Omaha Bound for 7-8 years doing projects, and Tim was always the idea guy. And one of the reasons I picked it is, like Rom the Space Knight, it hasn't been reprinted.
Yeah, and probably never will be.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do something that hadn't already been done. And so I got that idea from Tim. And I also, bought the beauty of eBay is you can buy a complete collection pretty quickly.
I actually was Googling how much it's going for, and I had one and I sold it during the crunch during the pandemic. So I wish I still had it, because it's a nostalgia book for me, because my brother handed it to me and goes, "This is a toy, man, but this is more than a toy comic. This is going to blow your mind." And it did, because one, it had a Cockrum cover.
Right.
And then it had Mike Golden, and discovering Mike Golden was like, what is this? This isn't,
Well, but the whole series, they were always these new artists that went on to have great careers.
Oh, yeah. Because
Golden, it's Brodrick, as you said, Butch Juice, Kelly Jones.
Yeah.
And we still had war horses like Gil Kane.
I like Gil Kane when they would do the Croyer story. He was perfect.
Yes.
I drew a Croyer rule. I remember that. And it had one of the greats in writing it, Bill Mantlo.
Yeah, and he held it all together the whole time through.
He created a mythos within that first 12 issues. I have the Marvel reprints where they did 7 volumes and a cardstock cover. That I still have. That I've sold most of my floppies, but that my friend was like, "Why?" It's like, it's one of the best first 12 issues of a comic book I've ever read.
Yes.
Blank slate. Yes. We have no idea who these people are.
Mm-hmm. But I liked how Bill Mantlo was able to keep it going even after Golden left. He kept creating these things. And like when Pratt Broddick came on and they did the Tales of the Microverse, those stories were better than the main story.
Oh, yeah. I love Pat Brodrick. I met him once. He did an Element Lad for me. And went at a comic shop I went to as a kid and worked at in high school.
Well, just think of all the great comics he's done over the years.
His Captain Marvel is amazing. His Firestorm is amazing.
Yes.
His Legion was good, and the only thing that that he ended up not being the main artist anymore, and it went to Keith Giffen. But I'm okay with that, because that's one of my favorite runs of Legion.
Right.
So.
But whenever Pat Broderick on there, he was on there for a while, and he brought the game right from issue 1 every time.
Yeah. I never understood why he didn't have a big book for an extended period of time. I've never understood that. Golden couldn't keep up.
Right.
And then would do the projects that he wanted to, and that's fine. But Pat Broderick could hit a schedule, and he was he could tell a superhero story.
Yes, he could.
Yeah, I would put him up there. He's an unsung hero of that era, because it's like there was Cockrum, there was him, there was Keith Giffen starting out, and he was as good as any of them.
His pages have been tougher to restore than a lot of the artists' pages.
Is it all that detail?
Yes. Yes, and a lot of what I call open panels, where the panels don't have borders.
Oh, yeah, he loves that.
And a lot of crossing over from one illustration to another, panel to panel, going on. Show motion and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do love his work.
Yeah. So I just I picked it, and I fell even more in love with it because when you're scanning it, and scanners are slow, you have to look at something while the scanner's working. Put the next page on, and the stuff was great. And I find, pointing out all sorts of in jokes. Every artist put a little something in there that are Easter egg that a lot of people don't realize, and they're just hilarious.
Something to keep them from getting, sometimes it's working. People go, well, they're an artist, it must be fun. It's still work.
Right.
You've got deadlines.
Right, but they sneak a little something in.
Something to entertain themselves.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe the number of DC characters I've found throughout the whole 59-issue run.
Oh, God, that's common, isn't it?
Yeah.
In anything. I was reading an article, I think it was in back issue, about someone hiding DC characters in the back of a Marvel panel. Just tons of it. Yes. Oh, yeah, they're in the background in this story.
Yes.
So it's how many pages again? It's a big number.
It's 1,924 interior pages, and then it's 59 covers and 2 annuals for Volume 1, and then it's 20 covers for Volume 2.
That's the New Voyages. That's the Jackson guys, and Kelly Jones did those.
No, it was Kelly Jones and Peter Gillis.
Peter Gillis. Oh, no, but I mean artist-wise. Who was it? Was it only?
Well, it was Kelly Jones and Bruce Patterson for a while.
Okay.
And then he inked some himself. He had some fill-in issues, which were interesting. Howard Bender did a couple fill-in issues, and then Ron Wingham did one fill-in issue.
Okay. It had such good long runs. I mean, it would have a regular... I think people like write... And Manlow did both volumes, didn't he? No, he didn't. Bill Mantlo only did the first volume. He
only did the first 58 issues.
Okay.
Peter Gillis did issue 59, and then they rebooted it to the Voyages.
Yeah. I'm a huge Mantlo fan. I don't think there's anything he ever wrote that wasn't just...
He always wrote good, fun stories.
Yeah.
Now if you wanted him to be War and Peace, that isn't why I read a comic. I read a comic for escapism. And I found his comics very easy to follow along as well as word-wise.
He could do that. He was that perfect balance of... I like a good comic art, and I will go to... sometimes I do want War and Peace in a visual medium like that, but I'll go hunt for that. But if I'm reading a 4-color superhero book, I would like as much plot as Roy Thomas, maybe a little more, but it doesn't have to be as complicated as, say, a Grant Morrison or an Alan Moore. It just simple. You're not It's not kiddie stuff. Some people go, doesn't it make it really kind of simplistic? And it's like, no, it's a lot deeper. If you're just writing good dialogue and creating characters, and what I love about Bill Mantlo is he creates a character. I know what Commander Rain is going to do. I know who he likes and why. I can tell from, you create the subtext. He creates a subtext of character so well that you know what the character is going to do. It's like you're watching a show with an actor. You know the character.
Well, and don't you think every splash page explained everything to you needed to know from the previous story to get into the next version?
Yeah, he didn't have a problem. I love Chris Claremont, I love Roy Thomas, but sometimes it's like, why are you... That's a 3-page wrap-up, and the comic's only 20.
Right.
But Bill Mantlo's stuff is just so natural and fluid that he does it without a lot of hyperbole and narration. He lets the conversations do it, and he gives his artists room to move. His Hulk run... I'd never been a Hulk fan, and I read his run religiously because I knew I was going to have fun, and I was going to be challenged, and there was going to be stuff happens, and there's ramifications, Mm-hmm. I'm of that comic generation. I liked the Silver Age when stuff was one and done, but I did like 4 or 5 issue arcs. I liked the story. I wanted a payoff, and he could do that. He could do that, and he could do character pieces. The Micronauts in his run you knew and loved every character. As a kid, it was addictive. It is one of those runs that I would reread, like at least once a year for a while.
Yes.
And I really liked New Voyages. I thought New Voyages was a fun comic too. Yeah.
And I've always thought that issue 59 of the first volume should be bound in with the 20 issues of New Voyage, because if you read it, it's the setup for it. Because when Bill Mantlo finished issue 58, he pretty much wrapped it up. You didn't need to read anything more after that. You didn't need the next stuff. It was like a movie that's perfect, and then they decide to do a sequel.
Yeah, it happened. Buffy season 6 or 5, or after they killed her.
Yeah.
They had a good out. They're done. I'm a big Supernatural fan, and I watched all 15 years. I will not apologize for being a nerd on that, because the people making it were nerds, so I enjoyed it. But I think season 1 through 5 of that is one of those things where it's like, that's one of the best 5 years of television.
Yes.
Because they told a story. There's no fluff. There's fun. You know, they would put a fun episode. Okay, we've had all this over dramatic stuff. Now we're gonna have a fun. Bill Mantlo, and then back to Micronauts. He could do fun. He could do funny too. He could have light moments. Because he did the pairings, like a Croyer and Bug become these kind of, you know, friend. They can form a friendship, and it's kind of odd. The robots have great personalities. I love the robots.
It's the way how the artist drew the robots. The expressions are hilarious.
Oh yeah, it is. It's
yes, yeah, and a robot drowning. Like, you had to read the story to know that a robot could drown. That's why I keep telling people over and over again. As I studied this carefully while working on it, I realized you had to read every word to get the most out of every picture.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I miss that. I've been rereading old comics now because I'm doing this podcast, and I had stopped for a while, and I still get a handful of new books. You know, there's writers I like. It's mostly independents now, but I dip in, and they're characters I'm always going to read. I'm always going to read Legion, even if I don't. You know, this version's okay. It's not for me. But I don't. Modern comics, they're afraid of it. They're afraid of narration and exposition and dialogue, which is where character comes from.
Yeah.
You know, and
I don't get that.
I don't get it either. I think it's a leftover of the 90s and the Flash Bang, and some of those guys are great artists. I love to look at a Jim Lee splash. It's great. But I can't read a comic he draws because there's no substance to it. Because the writer is being hamstrung by giant one-whole page panels that don't move the story. Yes. Just look pretty.
Yes.
You know, there's no movement. I don't get a sense of any, you know, but it looks good. But, I mean, but it's also page count. So, I mean, they've shrunk it.
Yes. I like how that Bill, even though it was one big story to me, all 58 issues that he wrote, each issue by itself could be a story.
Yeah. It's not that hard. It's not that people think that's a hard talent. I'm like, it's playing a rhythm.
Yes.
You assume you're writing a novel. It's a short novel, 5 or 6 chapters. If you're lucky, I don't mind it. You know, they're big long arcs. I've gone, oh, that was great. But you just have to have a little recap and discuss the things that are going on throughout the book, and it might be 2 panels. Claremont was really good about that. Roy could do it. I mean, Roy built his whole Avengers on that. So by bringing in people because they kept taking his characters away.
Yes.
Crap. Okay, now I need a new hero. Well, Hercules. But
right.
you knew who the characters were. A Legion fan. That was the one book where it's like that. From once they start writing the Tales of Legion, things that happened to those characters happened. I could pick up any issue and understand that character because even with the continuity. It was still a one and done, but it was like it was playing, but still playing on things that has happened. It wasn't the great reset like in Silver Age comics where everything has to be back to the way it was on the last panel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was never the case of the Micronauts.
No.
They never did a reset.
No.
In fact, they were not in the best of shape. Where they started and where they ended was, they had been through the ringer.
Yeah, I remember it was hugely popular work because I was working in a comic shop then. It was hugely popular till about 5-ish, about halfway through the run, and then I felt like I was one of the only people reading it in the shop.
Well,
I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. When was number one published? 70?
Well, 82 or 83.
82, 83. Okay, so it's it's early 80s. Yeah, it's right before I graduated high school. So I can remember the first 2 years it being really popular, especially when it was golden. I mean, it took a drop, but people liked Brodrick, so it held on to some people.
Mm-hmm.
But what else was there? Was there stuff going on behind the scenes other than the licensing aspect, maybe?
Well, it's probably never been reprinted because it was a licensed intellectual property from Hasbro, and Hasbro hasn't allowed it to be reprinted by Marvel or anybody else as far as the original stories. And since, the X-Men would show up from time to time, and other characters from the Marvel Universe would show up from time to time, those couldn't be reprinted together. And so it's, it's kind of, it's a tilting at windmills kind of project where we're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to see what the results are, but I have a couple end results besides just having a finished product. I mean, I'm taking very careful notes, and I'm writing as I go along a how to restore comic books how-to book, kind of giving step-by-step instructions on how you might approach a page and restore it, a pre-digital comics page. And then I'm also creating little 1 to 2 minute videos to demonstrate different techniques.
Oh, that's cool.
And this is like I said, a retirement project. I don't play golf, I don't do these other things. I still like going to the comic book store, even though I'm almost 70. But I have 2 grandsons, so I have that excuse of course, I've got to drive them over to the comic book store and check stuff out. I read all their stuff that they get, but I've been slowly giving away my stuff or selling my stuff because I figure in a few years we'll move from the big house to something smaller. But I've been doing this kind of work on and off since the early 2000s. One of the early things I used to do is Jack Kirby's work wasn't collected in the early 2000s. And so what we would do, I would take like all the Machine Man comics and scan them and bind them into a book, and then do a wraparound cover with a die stamp on it.
Okay.
And I would make 10 sets, and we would have what I call the 10. So out in the world, there's 10 sets of this. I have one.
Okay. Yeah, because I know other people that bind their comics and stuff like that because they're reading copies. I've always been collect to read. Right.
Me too. And for many years, since I've been binding my own comics since 1979, but I've been helping people since 2003 bind their comics into hardcover books. And I think we should use just certain methods to bind them. I like smice sewn or center sewn because you don't lose anything in the gutter.
Okay, because I was wondering how you do that without.
Right.
Do you have to cut the spine? Do you have to cut the spine?
What's that?
Do you have to cut because the comic's a saddle stitch fold over? Do you have to trim the page?
We sew right through the center.
Okay, so you don't damage the comic at all. You don't remove anything.
Theoretically, you could take it apart, and all you would have is the holes that are in the spine.
Okay.
Yeah, but the people that I helped didn't care about selling them. They wanted to have what I call trophies on their bookshelf.
Oh yeah, that's my wife is like, we just got a nice new bookshelf, and she goes, "You're like," it's like she's just looking. What is it? I've got these hardbacks,
They're trophies.
They are. Oh no, I have a complete. Someone noticed that I have a complete set of the All-Star Comic Archives and the bookends, and yes, I do. Yes. I didn't say I sold a lot of stuff, but that and the Legion, the hardback Legion that came out now. Basically, I plugged that in, so I have my trophy. I can go and read everything from Adventure 247 through the Great Darkness Saga.
Yeah. Well, when my boys were growing up, our house was one of the favorite houses to come to because their friends could come over in the wintertime during break and, pull a book off the bookshelf and, lay on the living room floor and read comics.
Yeah, see,
and I had runs of Master of Kung Fu and AVAC and a Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and a full run of the X-Men from 94 up and the whole 9 yards. And I've been slowly selling those off, but they're fun to read, and it takes you right back.
And it's got to help when stuff goes out of print, because I mean, there's weird things that are out of. I'm an All-Star fan, and All-Star Squadron's never been collected, never, and I don't think they'll ever collect. I have a feeling there's something in there, something in the contract. One of them, the Roy had or somebody, they don't want to pay that much to the artist, because that was during when they were up in the profit sharing or revenue sharing.
Yes.
I know why there are a couple writers, they don't do it because they're problematic. I'm a big Kazar fan, and they won't reprint that. So those books must have been great for kids, because, Master of Kung Fu was out of print for a long time, and I think they were like, how do we, there's some questionable things.
And I don't know if they were able to do the whole thing. I just know that I had every single comic.
They are up to 3. They've done 3 volumes.
And did they skip over certain issues or anything?
No.
Oh, cool.
They didn't hide the fact that it's pretty elements of it. I tried to explain to someone, goes, isn't it really kind of off color? I said, no, not really, because he's the bad guy.
Well, yeah, and it's
the bad guy name's objectionable when they get rid of Fu Manchu. I find that's more, it's
but it's 70s comics. I mean, it was the times, and I don't think you can sanitize it. You can't make it that way now.
But the thing, people go, well, what's it about? It's about a kid whose father's a crime lord, and he becomes a spy.
Yeah.
And it's not a kung fu. It's really not. It's more James Bond. It's more Bond than it is Bruce Lee.
Yes,
and that's what makes it so good.
What a writer.
Oh, my God. And the 2 spies that he works for, the 2 old white guys, are mess ups. He's the only one who, he saves the day.
And Nayland Smith, yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful, too. I mean,
Paul plays the art. Awesome.
And then the Day Brothers. I love the Day Brothers so much.
Gene Day and Dan Day, yeah.
Yeah,
I like Aztec Ace too with Dan Day.
I did too. That was I'm a big time travel kind of guy, and I loved it.
I did the restoration for that whole project, and it's finally coming out in August of this year.
Oh, really? Is it being published?
By Dark Horse.
How big a volume is that? It didn't run that long, did it?
It's 15 issues, but they have a lot of different, lots of different essays. The one on coloring is fantastic. It explains how comics got colored in the 80s, the 2 different ways. And it's got a lot of pinup pages at the back by famous artists.
Wow. I'll have to keep my eye out for that. That'll be one that I want on my shelf, because that was one of those. Was that an Epic? No, that wasn't an Epic. That was
No, Eclipse Comics.
Eclipse.
Yeah, I always have a little portfolio book. Remember Aztec Ace?
Oh my God, it's so good. It's a Steranko who could get the book on time.
Yes.
The Day Brothers. What's that? I'm a huge Sal Buscema fan, and my brother used to say, and I think it's probably true with the Day Brothers. It's why do John and Sal get all the work? Well, John's good and fast, and Sal's just fast.
Yeah.
But I think that's terrible. Sal's a really good comic artist. He's just very different than his brother, and he's an incredible inker.
I like him better as an inker at times. Believe it or not, I liked how he inked Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah, I do too. That's the one I'm like, what's your favorite Barry Windsor Smith? Anything Sal touched, it just is a little. He polishes it. It's just a little, and that's like we were saying before, inkers. You forget how much good they do. I mean, who inked? Who inked Golden on that? Did Golden ink himself?
No, it was Joseph Rubinstein.
Okay.
But then it was Al Milgrom, the editor, inked the last 6 issues.
I'm gonna have to look at that, because Milgrom puts a Milgrom stamp on everything.
Yeah, but there's at times his inks were fabulous.
Yeah.
He had his shorthand style, and then he had his fabulous style. And there'd be times where you'd have to look at the credits and go, no, that couldn't have been Al Milgrom.
Yeah, because he's gonna redraw it. If you know,
but he didn't. It was wonderful. You look at it and you go, holy moly.
And
really?
Brodrick was Patterson, right? Bruce Patterson? Was he his inker?
Yes, he was quite a bit. But the unsung hero of the Micronauts, as far as inkers was concerned, was Danny Boldani.
I love Danny Boldani's inks. They're a little heavy, but they're nice. He's good on. Oh God, who did he ink on this?
He inked over the course of that first 58 issues. He inked 14 different pencilers.
Oh my God.
And it kept it consistent.
He got there. I must be thinking the Brodrick Boldani stuff.
Yes.
That's popping in my head I know he did it. And
but also, Brodrick had Armando Gill.
I remember Armando Gill. I haven't heard that name in decades.
Yeah, he was the one that also did Master of Kung Fu, some issues there.
Yeah.
Randall Gill did a lot of stuff with George Perez, too.
In what, his Kung Fu stuff?
No, when his DC work.
Oh, I'm a huge Perez fan, but I didn't read Wonder Woman religiously. It was pretty. I just did,
Oh, but there's his Justice League and other things, too. He had some interesting inking pairings with Perez that worked.
And I'm gonna have to go back and look at that because that's interesting. Because there are inkers on Perez I don't like, and the ones I thought I wouldn't like, and I love them.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody but Romeo Tangel on him when he's doing Titans.
Exactly.
But someone goes, why? It's because that's what the Titans look like. I don't care who I give whoever his inker. I forget who inked him when he was doing Avengers with Busick. He had a steady guy, but I can't remember who it was.
I don't remember either.
Because when he was with Marvel the first time, they would just whoever didn't have any work to do was who was given to.
Yeah.
Vinnie did my first Perez is a Vinnie issue, and it really hurts it. I mean, he shouldn't.
Well, John Byrne with Vinnie Colita too, but.
Oh, I saw it. God.
And the Spider-Man issue, yeah, we could get off on just.
Okay, I'm a big on tangents, and
Vinnie did a great job throughout the series, holding things together, and I liked how he helped out on ROM Space Knight through the issues with Salvage.
That's what's popping in my head. He did a lot of ROM over Ditko.
Yes, he did Ditko.
I liked his. I
love how they had all sorts of inkers on Ditko, but he was the one that did multiple issues with Ditko.
It looked better when he did it.
Well, he was consistent.
I
admire people what I call journeyman artists, where they tried and true. They're going to come out, they're going to give you 15 points every night. Yeah,
no, it's true, and that's and like they're inkers like that. It's why Vinnie got so much work. It's here's I'll just throw a name out one. It's George Tuska as a penciler.
Oh yeah.
Solid work every issue. Didn't matter, and he would be, when do you need me? And he would do that fill-in issue.
And he also could make Don Heck better as an inker.
Yeah, I do.
He would ink Don Heck on the X-Men, and it helped.
It did. Don is, my love of Don is how he lays out the story, and I can see the same panels in different comics. Because he uses it, but did a lot of team books. Okay, we're going to do everybody at an angle, and the middle panel,
yes.
We can see everybody cascading across the panel.
Yes.
But he needs a good inker, and he needs someone he needs an embellisher. Because my wife asked, well, what's the difference between an inker and an embellisher? It's like, meaning the penciler didn't do all of the work. There may have been no background.
Right, he framed it up as somebody else did the drywall.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Wally Wood on those early Avengers issues, Don Heck and Wally Wood. They did 3 issues together, and they're like, wow.
Yeah, I'm a big JSA fan, and the Wally Wood stuff that was in those early All-Star comics when they brought it back.
Rick Estrada, yeah.
Oh, my God. And Superman in a spacesuit.
Yes.
That's... as a kid, and I would have been a tween, like a 13 or 14-year-old when that came out. It was like... It blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I know who Wally Wood is. I kind of know who Rick Estrada is because I think he's drawn a Conan. I've seen some sword and sorcery stuff my brother read, and some other stuff, but that was mind blowing. And that's where I became, Giffen came in right after it. Giffen, Wally and Giffen worked together. I'm not sure who pencils and who inks. It doesn't really matter. It looks like both of them.
Right. And Wally's strength, as well as any good inker, is that he was a good illustrator as well as an inker of somebody else's work. I liked him on Jack Kirby stuff. His Challengers of the Unknown from the 50s.
Yeah.
Primo.
Oh, it's so good. Wally Wood is one of those artists that I love everything I've ever seen him do. I'm not a big EC guy, but I'll sit if someone handed me an EC comic and Wally was doing the inside, I'm reading it, or at least staring at the pages for hours on end. And segue backward tangent again, but Micronauts was one of those books for me that it was something I reread.
Mm-hmm.
That it was like a story arc would end and I would go back and reread.
And Micronauts was one of those series where at times all you had to do was stare at the covers, because they had a wide raft of artists who did the covers. Because Michael Golden, even though he stopped at issue 12, he did covers way beyond issue 12.
Oh, I think he's one of the best cover artists in that era.
And then you'd have people like Mike Zeck and Keith Pollard, and Gil Kane did some great covers, but sometimes, especially the wraparound covers, were fabulous and a pain at the same time to work on.
Well, covers were so amazing, and especially that first 12 issues. First one's Cochran, but the rest are golden, aren't they?
Yes.
And you had that Swamp Thing one.
Yes.
Man Thing.
Yes, and a variety of others, like
I said, other
people's runs. But he also had a lot of great covers on Rom Space Knight.
That's true. He did do a lot of those. I loved Rom. That was a series. Another Bill Mantlo.
Well, yes. And the interesting thing, here's the trivia part of that. The story that started out in issue 1 wrapped up in issue 75. I mean, that love triangle that started there ended there. And it was amazing how they ended up together all those issues later, and all the trials and tribulations, and the two people were together.
God, that's one thing. The biggest shame is that these are two of probably Mantlow's best works, and they're not reprintable.
Yes.
Because his Hulk is amazing. Rocket Raccoon stuff was great. Anything he touched, he did better than most.
Sword of the Swashbucklers was fun.
Oh yeah, I forgot he did that. Yeah, I love it. I'd read a comic. My brother would hand me a comic, and I'd read it, and I go, "Wow, that was really good." And then that comic I'd never read before, and I'll go back, "Oh, it's Bill Mantlo. That's why it was entertaining." He did.
As a binder of comics, I can tell you that I was amazed how many times Bill Mantelo's stories showed up as fill-in issues.
He was the king of that.
Captain America, and then he'd be one issue. Like he did this one issue where Captain fights the bouncer, of all things.
He did this one in Avengers. It was during the Korvac saga that they couldn't get done on time, and he did that one, and it's Black Panther, Cap, and Iron Man. And it's drawn by Sal, and it's a great Avengers story, and it has nothing to do with the plot of the other stories, but it's just a great Avengers story. It's like I was like, why didn't they ever give Bill the Avengers? He'd have been good at it. He'd have picked an eclectic group of I think he'd be done what Stern did. He's like, I'm just going to pick people no one else is going to put in the book. And, because Stern's a little bit, he reminds me, Roger Stern reminds me of Bill Mantlo. Like, oh, you can do that. You got that same talent. You can write something very, it's never going to be bad. It's never going to be terrible. And you can sit it in the middle of anywhere.
Right. And it's what I call editorial proof.
Yeah. And then you can do an arc in a comic, and I'm not going to realize it took me 10 issues to get through this. But you're going to wrap everything up in a nice bow and then start your next adventure. Yeah. I was a big fan of his Avengers in the late 80s. It was just like, where's this coming from? And it had that same kind of feel that this Micronauts has, to where I was like, I don't think I should like this. It doesn't... I would never read a toy-based comic, but I read 2 religiously for a decade.
So my job as the evangelizer of this project is that this deserves to be preserved. This deserves to be reread. There's a lot of there that you're missing. You know, the rhetorical you of a comic book fan, and it's so fondly remembered by you and other people.
Oh yeah.
That I'm being cheered on every day as I work on it.
It's one of those ones. I think it's a comic that would, if it was reprinted, if they were willing to figure out how to reprint it. It's a business transaction. There's got to be someone smart enough that could crunch numbers and go, it's only going to cost us this much. Some other guy's gone ahead and cleaned it all up. We can reprint it, and they're going to realize this could be something that, there are. Trades that have been selling since the first time they came out.
Here's my theory. Marvel's now owned by Disney, the mouse. And let's face it, Disney knows how to work their vault and their IPs.
Yeah, this is a good one.
And if you think about all the Marvel projects that have come out that have actually been partnership products. For example, I'm going to show you this one. It's called Atlas at War.
Oh, I saw that was coming out.
And this is like a Bible of how to do restoration work. A guy named Alan Harvey did this. He would be a great person for you to talk to. But here's the thing. This was a partnership between the Naval Academy, the Dead Reckoning Publishing that likes to publish war stories, and Marvel. They got together and somehow worked out a deal. Marvel didn't have to do the work. They just gave their permission.
All right, I'm going to look at that. My brother sent me an image of that. He's a war comic and a newspaper strip nut. He liked enough everything.
Wait till you see the Don Heck artwork in here.
See, that's what I really like. Don Heck, some of the stuff that I've always liked Don Heck is his non-superhero stuff.
Jack Kirby wrote and drew 3 stories in here.
Yeah, like my brother sent me the image. I think he was hinting at what he wanted for his birthday or Christmas. Because that'd be right up his alley, and he could probably talk to me about 2 hours about each artist in there. So
originally it was $65. I got it for $42 on Amazon.
He may get it for Christmas if he's not if he doesn't bug me, and he sends me my Ultramans. He got me 2 complete of the Ultraman shows I used to watch as a kid. He goes, "You're gonna hate this." It's like, yeah, you're paying for it. I don't care.
Yeah.
So how far? I mean, what's your plan once you've cleaned everything up? It's 2 volumes.
Right. So here's what I'm doing. The first step was to scan everything. It took a year.
I can imagine.
Second step was to do what I call clean the gutters, where you cut out all the extraneous stuff before you start restoring. Because what's the point of restoring the artifacts that are in the gutters? There's none. So I cleaned those out, literally delete them. And I could do a show and tell and show you this. And then the last step is to restore the page. But what I'm doing this last year is I'm going to be on Twitter as well as on people's podcasts talking about it, so that when we get to the end process, when it's all done, maybe I can hand the files over to Marvel or whoever Marvel is designated. But also I'll have a book that I've written on how to do this and a series of videos. And then, maybe I can happily geek out and work with people on how to restore old comics. I'm lucky enough to have 2 grandsons. The oldest grandson, whenever he's here, works with me in the studio. He's better at text restoration than I am. He is a fidget monster. I mean, he just drives me crazy because he bounces around.
But if you give him
he can't sit. But when he sits down, boom, 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 boom. Then he has to go get a drink, and then boom, 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 boom. Then he has to go to the bathroom, and he fidgets all the time. He's 12.
Oh yeah, that's hence how I got comic books. We're road trip from California to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, via New York City, so my pops could see his dad. And it was 4 kids and 2 parents in a '72 Ford station wagon in 1972. Just like, here's some comics. Shut up. My brother would just go sit over there
and read.
And then I was like, okay, now I don't know what they're saying. So basically, my mom said, yeah, you knew how to read before kindergarten because your brother wanted you to leave him the hell alone. He taught you how to sound out, and you picked it up.
Yeah.
And it was a big.
But Oh,
So you can hand this over hopefully to Marvel and.
Right. I do plan to make, it's going to be a 4-volume set. I do plan to make a 4-volume set and put it on the trophy wall, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to need a slipcase. And maybe I'll have a spine design that'll go across all 4. We have bound, in partnership with Tim Benson, we've bound quite a few volumes of Micronauts, the regular comics. And so I've already done a series of custom covers. People are interested. They're like puzzled by how can you do this? I have the luxury of being retired, and I have the luxury of having no expectations except, I know I'm going to have a great product at the end. I just don't know if it'll go anywhere as far as a printed project. Yeah. I'm not going to get in trouble with the mouse. Trust me.
Yeah. Just as long as you're giving it to him, said, hey, I just did this out of the kindness of my heart. Here's some clean files. And if you want to, say thank you and put it out in a hardback, or if one of your people sees it and goes, why haven't we licensed the shit out of this?
Yeah.
Because they make, I'm a big Who fan, and they brought in and they're bringing in the people who brought it back, but now they own their own production company. And they said, we want to Marvel it. And people are, oh, it's terrible. It's like, no, it's Kevin Feige's kind of smart, and he's on our side, and he's done a really good job. It's a good product. It may not be, my brother's like, well, they're not following the stories. I said, that story was written before I was born, telling the stories for today. And they're doing a good job, and they're making a lot of product that is good quality.
Yes.
Filoni and Favreau over at Marvel too. Kathleen Kennedy went, I'm not driving this bus. I'm going to make these 2 dudes drive it because they're going to do a better job. And it's just if you're focused on suiting your audience, giving them what they want, it may not be 100% for you, but I think Marvel's done a good job on the multimedia stuff, because it's about quality, not. There's quantity now because they know how to do it.
Right.
But it's shit. Sorry.
But the bottom line with me is that I'm going to be talking about this for a year and sharing stuff every few days on Twitter. So stay tuned.
Yeah. I think it sounds like a great project. It sounds like something that needs to be done. And I think, like people ask me about my hardbacks, and I get all those special edition Doctor Who season box sets, and we talk about it and things. It's because, and it's like, don't you need just the movie? It's like, no, I want the extra features. I want the how-to stuff. Why? Because that's them documenting the creation of the art, and it needs to be documented, because we used to throw this stuff away. And as something as what some people might go, well, it's just a comic book, or it's just a science fiction TV show. Now, some of this stuff has become cultural icons. They're part of our culture. They're part of our mythos and our legends. Mm-hmm. All right, David, thank you for being with us. Folks, I've just edited a very long, meandering conversation, but we were talking comics, and that tends to happen. But it wasn't Micronaut related. David, where can people find you on the interwebs and follow your progress on this? It's fun, folks. It's a fun follow. It's a lot of pretty art. So...
they can find me on Twitter at DPBanks67.
All right, David. I'm going to be following, and I will probably, when I get to a more visual version of this thing, when you get close to the end, I might ask you to come back and show us what the final product looks like.
Be glad to.
It's great. It's good project, folks. This is pretty art. Google Marvel Micronauts. And then if you're really intrigued, go just be careful when you go on eBay. That's all I say. I looked at them today. I saw one run for $50. I saw another run for $500. I'm like, all over the place. All right. Well, folks.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, folks. That was a lovely conversation with David about the Micronauts Restoration Project. I want to thank y'all for listening. I had to do the tag a little separately. It was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate him being on. So please keep an eye out for him. Follow him on Twitter. Follow this project. I'm gonna have a few. Give me a few images, and they're gonna come up on the post. You'll have seen them on the post for this. And saving and preserving these comics is important. And it was just a wonderful conversation. Maybe I saved some of the conversation and posted it for another day, because we talked to Star Trek, Starman, Jim Shooter, Bill Mantlo, stuff like that. And I don't throw anything away. But, in a day or two after this, or maybe the next day, I will be back with our next installment of the Liberty Legion overview. And next Wednesday, our next another Supergirl story in my Legion adventure. Looking forward to it. But until then, be safe, be smart, and read some comics.